Today, MAGA extremism on full display at the Faith and Freedom Coalition Conference in Washington, D.C. MAGA lawmakers and conservative leaders gathered for the two-day conference to rally support for Trump while promoting their Christian faith. Reconcile those two. Among the speakers, Mark Robinson, the Republican nominee for governor of North Carolina, who's under scrutiny this week for his comments downplaying sexual assault and domestic violence. At the conference, he fiercely defended the MAGA movement, spewing falsehoods and bigotry.
We got a bunch of clapper-trap people that sit behind news media desks and want to talk about fake trials for President Trump, talking about all manners of foolishness. You know, the Democrats were the ones that were in favor of slavery, and they are the ones that fought like hell to keep them until they found out a different way to enslave people. Instead of giving them slave shacks and shackles, they decided they were going to give them welfare checks and the ghetto.
Meanwhile, other speakers launched attacks on a range of issues, from LGBTQ rights to the American justice system.
We ought to take the pride flag out of schools and put the Bible back in.
We're seeing the illegal weaponization of our courts and radical district attorneys. To those who attack and criticize and oppose Donald Trump, I want to quote Mona Lisa Vito in My Cousin Vinny. So what's your problem?
In case you didn't remember, that last person that we just saw was Monica Crowley, who served in Trump's Treasury Department and now hosts a right-wing podcast. She is unfazed by Trump's felony convictions, and many of Trump's supporters feel the same. Trump donations surging in the weeks since he was found guilty. The Daily Show's Jordan Klepper capturing the mood of Trump supporters at his Wisconsin rally this week.
Trump goes to trial for sexual assault. How much you giving? What is that? Is that
probably $1,000.
Okay, overthrow democracy. That biggie? Is that a $2,000?
That's probably $5,000.
Wow. Okay.
Basically, we just need to save our country from the border surge.
Right.
You don't need to be shelling out money to give immigrants who don't deserve it.
You're sick and tired of your money going to people who committed crimes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Jordan Klepper. Joining me now is Eugene Daniels, White House correspondent for Politico and co-author of Politico Playbook. Eugene, my friend, I got to get your reaction top line right now from what we heard at that Faith and Freedom Conference. I mean, last I checked, there was a separation of church and state, but apparently I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk to a lot of Republicans, especially the folks that we just saw on camera just now, is they don't really believe that there should be, and that they feel like an infusion of Christ and the Bible is the only thing that can save the political system, right? Even though it's very clear from the founding fathers that they didn't want that. They fled here to this country because they didn't want that. That's not a partisan answer. That is just strictly what the history of the country is. But what you have continued to see is that evangelicals have felt empowered because they have won a lot of the things that they've wanted for decades, right? You look at Roe v. Wade, you look at what they've seen and what we've seen, the kinds of folks who've gotten on the Supreme Court. So they feel quite emboldened, and they even though Donald Trump has all of the things that he's done, and I think they have told us that they don't see him as like the shiniest of Christians, but he gives them what they want and what they need, and so that is what you're seeing is a party and a movement trying to reconcile those kinds of things. And at times, even Republicans will say make excuses for things.
Yeah, but Eugene, there is this new polling, right? Trump's guilty verdict this week revealed 1 in 5 Americans, 22%, and that's not a number to sleep on, right? 22% of Americans say they are now less likely to support Trump, and his conviction is important to how they will vote in November. In the last segment, I had the law professor Jessica Levinson and Renato Mariotti. We were talking about maybe this way of having a mini trial, an evidentiary hearing in front of Judge Chutkan, where Jack Smith puts the entire case out there for America to hear before November of 2024, so that maybe it's not a jury trial proper, but it's certainly a way for Americans to say, you know what, 22% say, I'm not going to support Donald Trump. He's got one conviction, and then they hear all these evidence of what he did in the insurrection on January 6th.
Yeah, I mean, in that polling from my team, my folks over at Politico and Ipsos, what we continue to see is that the trials are actually not good for Trump for the general election. They were great for him when it came to the primary, right? He started to see more fundraising. He started to see Republicans dropping out left and right who were trying to run for president, and they started coalescing around him. That is not the same in the general election. When you talk to even some Republicans who may have voted for him twice before, what they will tell you is that I don't want to vote for a convicted felon. When you talk to independents who may have been interested in voting for Donald Trump, some of them will tell you that they're not interested in voting for a convicted felon, right? And some of them have their qualms with the case, but they say at the end of the day, they can't put that X next to his name as a convicted felon. And it may not be millions and millions and millions of people, right? That may not be the case, but 22%, and you cut that up into like the 4% in Michigan, 6% in Wisconsin, a little bit in Georgia, then you have a different race, and you have a much more difficult race that then President Donald Trump and his team, who double down on the fact that he's convicted and don't have any issue talking about it, they don't see it as an issue, but it is one that we hear over and over from people.